All right. Hello, hello, hello. I am super excited to be on here with y'all tonight, answering any questions and all of the questions that come up. So, super pumped to just kind of dive in. I'm going to give a second for folks to jump on and to start adding questions into the chat. I'm here to talk a little bit about lived experience with OCD, but also work around faith and OCD, all the things, and to answer your questions about what it looks like to have OCD, to advocate, to move into recovery, especially because it's OCD Awareness Week. So I'm really excited, especially to be on here for OCD Awareness Week as we chat about all the things OCD, as we raise awareness for OCD, as we talk about what it means to reclaim the big, beautiful lives that we desire and deserve. So as folks come in, again, you can start loading questions into the chat, and I'll try to get to as many as possible tonight. And I'm just going to start by sharing a little bit about me for any of you that I might not know at this point. So I'm Katie O'Dunn. I am actually an ordained minister. So Reverend Katie O'Dunn, but Katie is perfectly fine. I'm super informal. And I have OCD. I spent a really, really long time not being okay with saying the words, I'm a minister and I have OCD, because I had a lot of shame around what that looked like within faith communities. I was really fearful that people wouldn't respect me within those faith communities or within a leadership role if they had any idea what I was navigating or the intrusive thoughts that I was experiencing. And yet, I'm so thankful now to be really out and open about my experiences and sharing those things. So, when I think about my OCD journey, it really starts before almost I can even remember. I think about age 8 or 9 and walking around the room and touching things in a particular order, because I had this really big fear that the sun was going to get too close to the earth and something horrible would happen and it would be my fault if I didn't do everything just right. And I'm sure some folks who are listening might be able to relate to fears like that. So my parents took me to my first therapist at a pretty early age, again, around 8 or 9. And we did talk therapy, which, as some of you know who are working with NoCD or working with other providers, talk therapy really isn't helpful for OCD, right? It's all about exposure and response prevention. But because I was navigating an element of moral OCD and moral scrupulosity, I pretended to get better because I wanted my therapist to think he was good at his job. I was fearful that I would hurt his feelings or that he would lose his job if I didn't get better. So I was this 8-year-old just pretending to get better. Oh, and hi folks that are coming over from my fiance's stream, and thank you so much for the kind message. I know I just got a message in our comments here about the recent loss. I was going to talk about that a little bit tonight too, and what it means to navigate grief. I lost my grandpa last week and actually co-officiated some of that service this weekend. And it's been a tough last couple weeks of navigating OCD and grief and loss and all of the emotions that come with that. So thank you so much for those kind words and just for bringing that up. So thank you. But kind of back to the story piece, and I really went through my life hiding my OCD since that experience, and really ashamed of the intrusive thoughts that I was experiencing. Every time I get on one of these streams, folks say, well, what kinds of intrusive thoughts did you have? Or do you have? Or, I mean, we all get intrusive thoughts. I like to point that out too. Intrusive thoughts are just thoughts. And we all get them. Just folks with OCD tend to notice them and tend to get stuck on those particular intrusive thoughts. But everybody has intrusive thoughts. So the ones I particularly noticed growing up were thoughts around harm, were thoughts around sexual themes, were thoughts around religion. There were thoughts around contamination, thoughts around health. I mean, different phases of my life, my OCD latched onto different things because there were different things that mattered to me. There were different things that were significant to me. And by the time I actually got to college and by the time I got to seminary, my compulsions were kind of starting to take over my life. Most of the compulsions that I was doing outside of kind of some checking related stuff actually were in my mind. So I got to the point that I was doing maybe 10, 15, eventually probably 20 hours of mental compulsions a day of really ruminating, of reliving different aspects of trying to prove that things were true or weren't true. And really was keeping that under wraps because I had so much shame. I had a mentor in seminary when I wanted to finally get help tell me that, ooh, no, you can't let anybody know about this because you're up and coming in ministry. You're getting ready to move into your role. You won't get ordained. You won't pass your psych evaluations. You just need to not let anybody know. So I didn't. I lied on my psych evaluations. I pretended that I didn't have OCD. Pretended I wasn't going through this. And I entered my first big role in ministry, actually at age 25, where I was working with students from all different faith backgrounds, 2,700 amazing kiddos who were Jewish and Christian and Muslim and Buddhist and Sikh and Jain and beyond. And I kept it a secret. And I completely crashed and burned. Not necessarily externally, but internally. And I think a lot of you, when I say that, know what that feels like, where you almost feel like you hit rock bottom, particularly for me around the loss of a student that I cared about very much and the losses of other folks in the community, where I was the one who was facilitating grief and trauma responses. My OCD latched onto everything, every single person that was important to me, every student that I was working with. And I was very, very fortunate that as I hit that rock bottom, I was able for the first time to access evidence-based treatment, which I know is not necessarily the case for everyone. It was still about 17 years from my onset of symptoms, but I was still very, very lucky and very fortunate to get that treatment when I needed it. And I'm so glad for folks on here tonight that you know about OCD, that hopefully you know about ERP, or if you don't, we're going to be chatting about that tonight, all the things. But exposure and response prevention very much saved my life and helped me to start reclaiming that life. And for the first time, I was watching students that were around me that didn't want to share about their mental health struggles because they were ashamed of what that looked like in their cultural or in their religious contexts. And I realized I didn't want to be quiet about my story anymore. I wanted to let folks know that you can, in fact, have conversations about mental health within faith communities, within your school community, within any community, and that there is no shame in seeking clinical mental health treatment. So that's really how I got into advocacy initially, now doing doctoral work around faith and OCD, and specialize in religious scrupulosity, and get to do lots of work in conjunction with NoCD. And I'm a lead advocate with the IOCDF, where I'm not a clinician, but I specialize in helping separate what's faith from what's OCD and helping people on that journey. So that's a quick kind of overview of who I am. I'm going to go ahead and start to dive into some questions and respond as best I can, and kind of start navigating here. So y'all, as we go through, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. And again, I will try to get to as many as I possibly can. I also always like to mention one of the reasons that I love doing these streams with NoCD is raising awareness for a big project that I'm working on with NoCD right now. I'll share this again at the end, but I'm currently racing 50 ultra marathons in 50 states to fundraise for individuals seeking treatment with NoCD, to try to pay for one individual in each state to receive treatment from NoCD with an additional match by NoCD, to make sure that everyone can afford treatment. So I have my next race in Maryland in 3 weeks and would love support for that. So I'll share a little bit more information about that later on in the stream too. Okay, so question time. Let's see. Yeah, so I've experienced pretty much every subtype of OCD that you can possibly imagine. And I like to tell folks, first of all, that OCD is OCD is OCD. I actually like to say that all of the different subtypes of OCD are just kind of really gross flavors of the same ice cream that is OCD, right? So whatever the theme is, keeping in mind that it's not about the theme, it's just that we have OCD and we're latching on to that particular content that is significant to us. So yeah, I've experienced almost everything theme under the sun. If I don't know if you're talking about harm OCD or sexual orientation OCD, which is kind of the new and inclusive term that's used for what was previously called HOCD. But I would say I have experienced both in lots of different aspects of life. So harm OCD was one of my primary themes, where I was really fearful that I would cause harm to others, either accidentally or on purpose. And I did a lot of different things to try to prevent that from happening. I even at one point started having false memories around harm, around crimes, around things in the community, where it was these thoughts around, well, what if I did that horrible thing that I saw in the news? Or what if I'm responsible for something horrible that happened and I just forgot? I just somehow blocked it out. We can talk more about that if folks tonight are interested in false memories, which really aren't memories, but it's OCD about the past, where we start to latch on to things or a thought that we have about something that might not have really happened. Sexual orientation OCD. Yeah, I mean, I've navigated this. So many friends really have navigated this as well, regardless of their sexual orientation, where you are questioning, well, am I right about my sexual orientation? Well, I don't want to be wrong about my sexual orientation. And the same thing can come up with gender identity as well. And that's so hard. And the reason it's so hard, again, is that OCD is making you think something that isn't really who you are. So remember, it's ego dystonic, and that means it's in opposition to your true nature, to the things that you actually believe. So yes, yes, yes. And thank you for asking that, Morgan. I'm happy to dive in more specifically if you have more questions on this. Okay. Yeah, so wondering if you have any tips for treating OCD at the root, and also what you think about having to repeatedly manage OCD, and if that means I'm doing something incorrectly with riding the wave. Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of treatment, again, I'm not a clinician, but I do work with a lot of folks, particularly in the area of religious scrupulosity, and I've kind of been there myself. And I think treating it at the root, when we think about that, often we feel like we're playing whack-a-mole with different themes. And some of y'all might relate to this. It's like, oh, this theme popped up. I did exposures around it and whack. Now it's gone. Oh, next theme popped up, did exposures around it and whack. It's gone. Well, that's not really how we tackle OCD as a whole. Tackling OCD is about embracing uncertainty, not just about a particular theme, but about everything, saying, I'm willing to accept all of the uncertainties of life. To steal from my fiance, Ethan Smith, who I know some of you from his stream, who's also an advocate, he talks about the uncertainty blanket. So Ethan, sorry for stealing that, but it's wrapping an uncertainty blanket around everything. It's being willing to be uncertain about absolutely everything. It's being okay with that, as opposed to just individual themes. And then in terms of, are you doing something incorrectly with riding the wave if you're repeatedly managing OCD? I would say no. I think OCD is something that, let's see, how do I answer this? OCD is something I really believe I'll navigate throughout my life. But at the same time, it's not something that I think will impact my life on a daily basis. So here's what I mean by that. I think there's a level of acceptance. In addition to accepting uncertainty, there's actually a level of acceptance about the diagnosis, whereby saying, yeah, you know what? I am willing to respond to aspects of my OCD every single day, but I'm not going to let it take over my life. I think that's an aspect of riding the wave, but not being frustrated that you're riding the wave, but still living your life, even with OCD there. Like when you go on vacation saying, yeah, bring it on OCD. You can pack a suitcase, you can come with me, but I'm not going to change any of the things that I'm doing. There's an upcoming talk at the IOCDF virtual conference I'm doing with Ethan and with Kim Quinlan and Shala Nicely on OCD is chronic. So what? Let's have a joyful life anyway. So I wonder, and you can answer this lower in the chat if you want to, but with repeatedly managing OCD, if there's a way to reframe and say, yeah, it's fine if thoughts continue to pop up. I'm not doing anything wrong. But what I do want to do is prevent them from impacting the things that I'm doing. So I wonder for you what it looks like to both accept uncertainty, but also accept the OCD and to allow it to be there as you live your life. So I would be curious kind of what your answer to that is. And I'm happy to loop back to this because I know that's a big topic. Okay. Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so funny. I used to be in such denial that I had OCD, was embarrassed. I'm 57. OCD was so much less understood when I was younger. Now I feel comfortable telling anyone. Glad about that. Yeah, that's so huge. And I just want to put out there that it's different for everybody, and however you choose to advocate, whether that is sharing your story or whether that's doing that more anonymously or sending letters or whatever that is, it's okay. I know we all share in different ways. But I think it's really, really neat when we get to a point of saying, you know what? OCD doesn't define me. And I am this awesome human being, despite what OCD might say. And I'm willing to raise awareness to help others. So I'm so proud of you for that. And that's just awesome. Yeah. Existential OCD. Whew, I've been getting a lot of questions on this lately on stream. So also wonder if you have any thoughts about existence, like why do hands exist or why do elements exist? Yeah. So not these specifically, but I've definitely had existential thoughts relating to why are we even here? Why is this even here? Is this actually here? Am I just imagining this? I mean, it can go existential thought upon existential thought upon existential thought. And it can get really, really deep. I know there's a lot of advocates in the community who really struggle and navigate this. And I think for me, one of the most effective things has been just like we do with rumination to notice if I'm starting to go down that loop of giving those thoughts attention and say, okay, you know what? Don't know the answer to this question, but I'm going to return to the moment. Even if I have to do that every 5 or 10 seconds as those existential thoughts pop up, seeing them, letting them be there, but as opposed to getting into that loop of the question that leads to the question that leads to the question, continuing to come back to the moment and be able to say, yeah, you know what? It doesn't matter right now. Maybe all of this doesn't exist, but I'm here right now and I'm going to engage in this way. But I know that can be really, really tricky too, especially when it feels like all of those questions continuously build on each other. Yeah, and I agree. It's always kind of a curious thing. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So, any resources for a spouse who does not have OCD and has a hard time understanding? Yeah, I know there are some specific streams on this, on OCD, but also on the IOCDF. Ethan and I just did a talk on this at the live conference in Denver, and this topic has been coming up a lot. So, I know that we're actually talking about doing a more regular stream on this. But just anecdotally, if you're asking, how do I explain to my spouse what I'm navigating? I think in the simplest form, just being able to say, or even ask your spouse, what is the thing that you are the most afraid of? And that can be different from everybody. Maybe it's there's a bear, maybe it's you're afraid of heights, maybe whatever that thing is. And tell them to imagine that thing is in front of them all the time. And no matter what they do, that thing is still in front of them constantly, forever and ever and ever and ever. And the harder they try to push it away, the bigger and scarier it gets. I always like to tell folks who don't have OCD that it's literally like a bear standing in front of your face, and you just see it. And life is kind of around it, right? But the bear is just so apparent. And I think letting them know how challenging, how emotional that is, and even asking them how would they feel when they were in that situation. But in terms of additional resources, I think it can also be helpful to really talk with them about how they might support you. We know that offering reassurance, that offering accommodation is not helpful as much as we might want that from loved ones. Ethan and I are definitely not perfect at that, even though we have both have OCD, but it doesn't help. It just feeds the OCD. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want your loved one to just shut you down or get mad or get frustrated, even if you're asking for reassurance. So it can be different for everybody. But what I found to be really, really helpful, and Ethan and I talk about this a lot, is having him say, you know what, Katie, I really feel like your OCD is in the driver's seat right now. And this is a question that I really can't answer for you right now because it sounds like you're OCD and I don't want to make you sicker, but I still love and care about you. And I'm here for you as you sit with that discomfort. I know that sounds really simple, but there's actually, I think, something about really encouraging our loved ones to stay calm with us in that space and say, you know what, I'm not going to answer that, even if you get really upset. But I get it. And I get that it's hard. I think we can offer empathy without offering reassurance, and letting loved ones know that that's possible can be huge, 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 huge. Another component that seems really simple, but I think can be so effective is inviting your spouse with you to a therapy session, to meet your therapist, or inviting your spouse on a live stream to hear from others. I would also encourage, even at the upcoming virtual conference, there are going to be some particular, the IOCDF virtual conference, there are going to be some particular streams and particular tracks for loved ones. So even to come on there with you and to chat about and watch different things together could be really, really helpful. Okay. What's your recovery like? This is a great question. So I talk a lot on Instagram about what it's like to live a big, beautiful, awesome, joyful life. But it doesn't mean that recovery is joyful all the time. It doesn't mean that recovery is perfect. And I think sometimes we have this vision that, oof, we are going to move into recovery and there is going to be nothing wrong ever again, or OCD is never going to bother us ever again. And I think that's not the case. And I think part of recovery is recognizing that OCD is still going to pop up from time to time, but we get a choice as to how we respond to it. And that's really what it's been like for me. There are times throughout the week that I can notice my OCD spiking. And there are some times that I respond to it really well. There are other times that I don't respond to it quite as well, right? But I feel like I'm in the driver's seat where I have a chance to actually notice that's OCD and figure out how to respond. On the other side, or kind of as a second point, recovery for me is like actually being present in moments that I could never be present in before. I know someone a little earlier asked about the loss that Ethan and I experienced in the last week. So I just got back yesterday actually from being in North Carolina for 2 weeks with my grandparents. I'd been at the hospice bed with my grandpa for about a week, and my grandpa passed, and then spent time with my grandma, taking care of her and helping officiate the funeral. And there's lots of emotions around that. I'm not trying to be overly emotional, but the reason I'm sharing this is this was the most present really that I'd ever been in the midst of tough family moments. And I think when I was in the throes of OCD, it wasn't just the good moments that I was missing. It was the really, really hard moments because I felt like I couldn't be present. I was too worried that I had hit someone with my car, or that I had called someone a bad name, or that I was a horrible person, or that I was going to contaminate someone or leave a stove on. I mean, whatever it was. But I couldn't be present in those actual, real, meaningful moments of life. Recovery for me looks like the fact that over the last 2 weeks, I have sobbed because I was in so much grief. I have yelled because I've gotten frustrated and angry. And I've also laughed being with family and sharing memories. And those were all things that I couldn't have really done 3 or 4 years ago because I had this mask of OCD covering up all of the experiences of life. So going back to what I was saying about living this big, awesome, full, joyful life, I think recovery for me is definitely being able to experience joy, which I couldn't experience before. But it's also being able to experience grief and to be able to experience the full spectrum of emotions that OCD took away from me for so long. Okay. Next question here. Can OCD make you feel like you want it and who you are has really changed, especially if you're not anxious? Yes, 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 definitely. So especially when it comes to the backdoor spike, which is as your symptoms are starting to get better with OCD, as you're starting to feel less anxious, you can actually get anxious about not being anxious. So let me explain what that means. For me, that looked like not having the same level of anxiety and guilt and shame around intrusive thoughts because I had been doing my exposure and my response prevention regularly. And then I started to think, wait, why am I not having those feelings around these intrusive thoughts? Does that mean I like these intrusive thoughts? Does that mean there's something wrong with me? Wait, does that mean I don't really have OCD? I mean, all of these things. So OCD is the doubting disorder, and it can even make you doubt having the disorder, doubt how you feel about the thoughts, doubt who you are. And it can make you doubt all of those things. And yet, going back to ERP and the principles of that, accepting uncertainty is still at the core. It's interesting when we get anxious about not feeling anxious and then are like, wait, are we really anxious? Or are we not? And what I would encourage you to do is to lean into that and say, you know what? I may or may not be anxious. I may or may not like these thoughts. But you know what? I'm going to choose to accept the uncertainty in favor of the things that are meaningful to me and in favor of my recovery. That's why a lot of times we'll talk about moving towards your values as a part of OCD, to have kind of this carrot when it feels really tough to say, you know what, I'm willing to risk all the bad, scary stuff for a chance at this big, beautiful life that I desire and deserve. Now, to the point of the question, sometimes OCD can even make you question those values that you're moving towards. We also did a recent IOCDF live stream on that I facilitated on living into your values when OCD makes you question your values. So that's something that you can also find on YouTube if that's a topic you're interested in. But this comes up a lot. And it doesn't mean you're not who you are, right? The reason that you're asking the question to begin with is actually because of the person you are and because OCD is ego dystonic. But I know how tough that can be. And I remember questioning every aspect of myself and feeling like I was just pretending to be the person that I was. Okay. Next question here. Is it typical for OCD to come and go in waves? I go through a few months of minimal OCD symptoms and then have a few months where it really flares up. Yeah, I think this can look different for everyone, but that's very much the experience actually that I had for a really long time, where I would go through periods where it felt like OCD was almost dormant, and then all of a sudden, it would kind of do this flare up. And what I think that can come up for a lot of different reasons, but OCD likes to really spike, especially when we have changes that are going on in our life. If those things are good, if those things are bad, all of those things, and particularly with stress and with new emotions and with new experiences. And OCD really can come and go with that. It also can come and go just because it's OCD. Sometimes I think we let our guard down when we go through kind of a lull period. So for me, really the first time I went through ERP, I finished and I was like, yes, all right, my OCD is gone forever. It's great. I'm going to go. I'm going to live my life. I'm never going to think about OCD again. And I had this period where it was like, oh, things are great. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, OCD exploded. And I think it's because I let my guard down. I stopped using my skills and tools. And I think one of the best ways to address it coming in waves is going back to what I talked about a little while ago, actually acknowledging that, yeah, you know what? OCD is kind of with me every day. It is what it is. It doesn't have to impact me every day, though, right? I can respond and live this lifestyle of uncertainty each and every day. I can respond to my intrusive thoughts in a way that, rather than having these lows and these highs, I can continue to maintain by sitting with that uncertainty, by not seeking reassurance, but by living my life really alongside the OCD. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that. And as I go down further, I'll loop into that if you do. Yeah. Struggling with ROCD, have you experienced this with a partner? Any tips? So we actually have an IOCDF stream coming up that's kind of specific to something we don't talk about a lot, which is religious scrupulosity and ROCD and how they sometimes intertwine. So if anybody here is navigating kind of scrupulosity related symptoms alongside struggles with their partner and our OCD. We have that stream coming up, I think, in 2 weeks. So that should be a really, really great time to chat about that. But ROCD, for anyone who doesn't know, is a subtype of OCD, relationship OCD, just another gross flavor of the same ice cream, like I said earlier, where you wonder a lot of things with your partner. It can really be any question that comes up. It can be, do I really love my partner? Is my partner right for me? Am I right for my partner? What if my partner doesn't really love me? What if this isn't the one? I mean, anything under the sun, because OCD is the doubting disorder, right? So a lot of times with this, just like with any other theme, we'll go online and we'll scour and we'll look for all of the things that people have experienced with our OCD. And generally, we'll find that maybe there's some aspect of ours that's a little bit different, right? Because we're all different. So OCD is going to latch onto something different. And then we're going to say, oh, well, what if mine's different? What if it isn't really this? What if it's not really OCD? So I'm just putting that out there for any theme, for anybody who might be experiencing that. Biggest tip when navigating this with a partner is to, one, do your exposures and always the response prevention, working with an OCD specialist. But two, to really, I would encourage you to continue to live a value-driven life with your partner in the midst of that. I think that can be really hard, but it can also be the biggest exposure of all. OCD is going to tell you, okay, I can't enjoy my life with my partner until I figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. So I would encourage you in treatment to continue to work on your exposure and your response prevention, while, as possible, living your life with your partner, even if that's really uncomfortable, even if that feels really icky. On Instagram, I always say, stick with the ick, because the biggest exposure of all is living despite what OCD tells you. This is another really great place, depending on kind of your situation, to potentially engage your partner with your therapist as well. That way they are aware of what's going on, specifically so that they're not offering you reassurance or accommodation. If you're asking them particular questions about how you feel about them or how they feel about you, this would be another great opportunity for your partner to say, you know what, it looks like OCD and smells like OCD. I don't think I can answer this right now, but I care about you and I'm here. Ethan always says to me, it sounds like OCD's on the phone. Can you put Katie back on the phone? Which I always really like too. But Tiffany, I'm sorry you're struggling with that. And again, just remember, OCD is latching on to the thing that's the most important to you, which in this moment is your relationship. And I know that can be so tough, but you deserve to continue to move through treatment and do all of the things that you want to do. Okay. Let's see. Next question. Okay. Thanks. I still have a block when it comes to living my life the same, even when uncomfortable, working on becoming less judgmental about that stuff. Yeah, no, totally. I'm super judgy with myself, and that's something I'm working on too. So self-compassion, love the work of Kristen Neff and of Kim Quinlan. And I think the self-compassion piece with this can be really huge too. To be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it perfectly. I always say, instead of setting goals, make a compassionate commitment. You can say, you know what, I'm going to compassionately commit to do my best this week to continue to live my life regardless of what OCD says, to do all of the things that I want to do. And Ethan talks about this a lot too, that even at the end of the day, if you've noticed a lot of intrusive thoughts, but you still did everything you wanted to do that day, whoa, that's a really, really big win. And maybe not even everything, maybe one thing. Maybe you went out and you took that walk that you were fearful to take. And OCD told you it wasn't going to be okay, but you chose to do it anyway. That one thing is a win. Even if the intrusive thoughts were flowing that entire time, you can say, you know what? I did it. I fought that. And again, that's the biggest exposure of all. I think for me, actually, giving myself permission to experience joy when OCD says I don't deserve it is like literally my biggest life exposure. It's one of the reasons, I guess I'm wearing green right now, but I'm usually wearing pink. You see like all my diplomas and stuff have pink. My Instagram is like littered with pink. Everything I do is pink, because honestly, it's kind of an exposure for me. I really like pink. And for a long time, I felt like I couldn't wear it or I couldn't do things in pink because it was too cute and I wasn't a good enough person to deserve that. So really living my life in pink and with joy is an exposure for me. When OCD says I'm not supposed to do that, and I say, you know what, I'm going to let those thoughts be there, and I'm going to do those things anyway. Okay. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, this one is one on my in my wheelhouse. So I'm so glad your son is working with no CD. First of all, he has religious OCD, and it's hard for him to do his therapy without undoing because he's afraid of going to hell. How can I help him? Yeah. So really across faith traditions, religious scrupulosity or religious subtypes of OCD can be so hard because OCD again is latching on to that thing that's the most important to you, your faith. And OCD is going to say, woof, these exposures are in opposition to your faith and you're going to go to hell. That's frankly what OCD is going to say. Without offering reassurance, I guess this is an element of reassurance. I was going to say OCD is lying, which it is. But what I would encourage you to do with your son is to potentially try to reframe what those exposures look like. A lot of times, the work that I do in my practice, faith and mental health integrative services, I work alongside clinicians and help kind of separate what's faith from what's OCD in different faith traditions and develop exposures and stuff like that. But what I'll often tell folks is that ERP in and of itself can be a spiritual practice because right now, OCD is forcing you to worship the OCD. It's going to say you're worshiping God by engaging in these rituals or engaging in rumination or repetitive prayer, or whatever that looks like for you. But if you're doing it out of fear, if you're doing it out of obligation, if you're doing it because of guilt or because of shame, that's something that you're actually doing because of OCD and not because of God. By engaging in ERP, that actually opportunity to start worshiping God, to start worshiping the divine within your tradition in a way that's value driven and meaningful to you. Because for the first time, you get to do things out of joy and out of hope and out of comfort and out of meaning and out of your true and authentic beliefs. And in a way, I really think that makes ERP an effective spiritual practice because it reconnects you with God. Every person that I've worked with that's gone through OCD treatment for a religious group has come out the other side having a closer relationship with God that wasn't based on fear, but that was actually based on their beliefs and on who they were. I would also encourage you and encourage your son to give yourselves lots of compassion throughout that experience because I know that it's really hard. But I would also say, I always tell folks, again, across faith traditions, I'm not sure what tradition y'all come from, but it really applies across the board, that if you see the divine as this big, awesome creator, right? I always say, God can handle our exposures with all that's going on in the world. God can handle these exposures that we're doing over here to get back to actually living the big, beautiful life that God has created us to live. And that's okay. If God knows all, if God loves all, God understands why we are doing these things to be able to reclaim our lives. So I'd encourage you to tell your son to really think about not just the exposures, but the response prevention. Because when we undo the exposures, we're undoing all of that hard work that we're doing. And to really rethink about the fact that if we're doing response prevention, if we're not undoing the exposures, that in and of itself is the spiritual practice that's going to ultimately bring us closer to God. So I hope that's helpful. You can feel free to reach out to me offline if you have additional questions about that, and I'm happy to help you with some more specifics. And I'll give out my contact information at the end too. Okay. I feel a lot of OCD when I'm in my own home, but not when I'm out in public or at friends' houses. Is that typical? I wonder if it's because my house is in my place and therefore I'm responsible for it. Yeah, I mean, I think this can be for a lot of different reasons. Some folks that it's really focused on their house. There are other folks that it's really focused on public spaces because they're around people and it might be more socially based. I would say it's typical in that it's latching on to the things that are significant to you. Like you said, you see your house as your place. as you being responsible for it. Even you writing the word responsible, a lot of times OCD has to do with over responsibility. So yeah, the fact that you feel responsible for your house, it makes a lot of sense that OCD is latching on to that particular place. For me, for a long time, my OCD was really centered around the school I was working in, school chaplaincy, because I felt responsible for that place and the people who went there and my role there. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Let's see. If I'm seeing a therapist, what do I have to do to have advocates from no CD? Danny, feel free to expand on that a little bit further down in the messages. I'd love to answer you. Are you seeing a therapist from no CD? And what do you mean by advocates from no CD? Is that chatting with other folks? Is that peer support? So just let me know specifically what you're talking about, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction of resources. Okay. Great question. Do you have some tips on how to manage the anxiety that comes with not doing compulsions? I'm afraid of not doing the compulsions because I know it will ruin my day or even ruin my whole week. Okay, I have lots of thoughts on this. First of all, yes, it might feel like in that moment it's going to ruin your day, it's going to ruin your whole week. But I want to give you an even bigger fact. And there aren't a lot of things that I'm certain about, but this is actually one thing that I'm certain about. Doing the compulsions actually it doing those compulsions, even if it makes your day, your week better, is going to make your life worse. It's going to make you get a lot sicker over the course of your life. And I think there's a question you can ask yourself of, would I rather be uncomfortable today and uncomfortable this week and reclaim my life? Or would I rather give into it in this moment and continue to get sicker? Because we know what happens if you continue to engage in compulsions. And I'll tell you, that's something I'm pretty certain about. You will get sicker. But if you make that choice in this moment to sit with the discomfort, even if it's going to be an icky day or an icky week, that's how we get better. But here's the thing, even if you feel like it's going to ruin your day or ruin your whole week, I would also encourage you to reframe what ruin means. It means that, yes, you might have a series of intrusive thoughts that become sticky, but we can still make the choice, even in the midst of those intrusive thoughts, to do all of the things that are meaningful to us. And that's really what fighting OCD is all about. I get it. I used to hear folks talk about this and be like, they don't get it. They don't understand this level of anxiety. I remember feeling so crippled and feeling like I would literally die if I didn't engage in these compulsions. I remember what that felt like. It just would take over every aspect of me. I felt like I deserved to be in jail. I felt like I didn't deserve anything. But it was really, for me, the turning point was saying, you know what, I'm willing to risk all the scary stuff being true for a chance to move forward, for a chance that even if this does ruin my day or my week, that I could, in fact, have a beautiful life, that I could live a beautiful life. Now, managing that anxiety, I think there's two kind of components of that. And I would encourage you to talk to your OCD specialist and your clinician. Managing anxiety, we can definitely do with things, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's breathing related exercises, whether it's doing particular things to tap into the senses and to come back to the moment. But I would also tell you that there are times that we might not want to bring down the anxiety because that's a part of the exposure process too. So depending on the function of what you're doing at that particular time. Exposure and response prevention is all about raising the anxiety and letting it kind of come down on its own by not engaging in the response. And what I would actually tell you, and this sounds ridiculous, and I never believed it either, is that even if that anxiety goes up a lot, if you let it be there actually without trying to get rid of it, it will in fact go down on its own. Your body can't maintain that high level of anxiety. It'll start to decrease. It really, really will. And I know that sounds ridiculous. People, again, used to tell me that. And I was thinking, they have no idea. But it does. It starts to go down. And that is really the act of fighting OCD. It's letting that anxiety be there. It's not trying to get rid of it. It's saying, you know what, I'm willing to be anxious for as long as it takes. I am not going to engage in that compulsion. And it's when we're willing to do that that it actually starts to subside. So I hope that's helpful. I know it's so, so, so hard. And please know that you're not alone. Okay. Yeah, this is a really great question. Ethan and I got this question, or some version of this at the conference. Um, I don't know from from a research perspective or anything like that. I don't know. I would say, let's see, anecdotally, and for Ethan and I, we still have to work really, really hard in our relationship. We both have OCD. We both kind of understand what the other person is going through. But I think we still have to do what any other couple does. I have to try to understand how to respond to his OCD. He has to try to understand how to respond to mine. And there's sometimes additional challenges with that too, because it can be easy to fall into the trap of, oh, you understand. So I'm just going to vocalize all of my intrusive thoughts in ways that aren't necessarily helpful. I think any relationship, you have to really work. And even for two folks who might have OCD, it's going to manifest in different ways. And there's still an element of trying to understand one another. Ethan and I always say, our OCD originally brought us together because we did meet through advocacy, but it's not actually what made us stay together or fall in love or get engaged or anything like that. It was all of the other things that we had in common. So I think relationships are challenging no matter what. And it's not necessarily about both having OCD or not having OCD. It's about finding your person and seeking to understand and support them in whatever they're navigating with life. I think that's a great question. Um, oh, Oh, perfect. Mention no CD in the IOCDF stream. So glad that you're here. Thanks, Leanne. I know I see you over on on the IOCDF side. So glad that you're here. Awesome. Thanks for popping over. Okay. Okay. I was gonna say I'm not so glad that you navigate that, but I am glad that I mentioned tonight that we have that stream coming up. So please, yeah, look up at IOCDF Peace of Mind. It's not, is it next Tuesday? I actually do think it's next Tuesday, but it's like in the next, I guess it's here, let me tell you. Yeah, it's the 18th. So Tuesday, the 18th, we're having the IOCDF stream on the crossover between ROCD and religious scrupulosity because it's super, super common. So please check that out. I'll be moderating that, and it should be a really, really great conversation. Okay. Okay. Like my first question, can you talk about OCD manifesting as an awakening or a realization? As I've gotten better, that's the theme my brain is saying my thoughts are rather than OCD, and it's confusing. Yeah, I hear this from folks a lot, and what I would say around this is while we will never have certainty, I do want you to hear that this is something that's pretty common with OCD, where I'll hear folks talk about, yeah, well, what if this isn't really OCD? What if this is actually something that's symbolic? What if this is an awakening? What if this is a realization? What if this really means something? And I would encourage you that the fact that you're even on an OCD stream and asking kind of if this is OCD and saying it's confusing is a really good sign to treat it like OCD. I will generally try to apply the rule that if I'm even asking, even like 1%, if this could be OCD, that I should treat it like OCD. Because generally, if it's not OCD, we'll handle it and we'll take care of it without even asking the question. I'll ask this. Health anxiety is a more tangible place to say this, but I think it applies across the board. I generally think if someone calls me and says, "Hey, is this my OCD? Do you think this is a real health concern? Like, should I go to the ER now or not?" Generally, if there was something where they actually had to go to the ER, they would probably just go to the ER. They wouldn't be calling me as somebody to help them navigate the OCD aspect of it. They would just take care of it. That's a biological response. So if we're asking, is this OCD? I think it's a great idea to treat it like OCD. So looping back to this, I would encourage you, if you're even saying, well, is this OCD? Is it not? It's confusing. I would encourage you to treat it like OCD and to say, you know what? Hi, brain. It might be an awakening. It might be a realization. I'm not sure, but I think it's probably OCD. And I'm going to take that leap of faith. I'm going to treat it like OCD because I want to continue to move forward with my life. I am willing to take that risk to move towards everything that's meaningful to me. I know that other people have this and that it's OCD, and I'm going to choose to take that leap of faith. So I hope that's helpful. Okay. I'm glad something I said was funny. I don't know what we were referring to at this point, but yay, that's awesome. Okay. And then I see, yes, religious OCD. Um, let's see. Okay. I'm wondering if people can do parallel treatment. I currently have a counselor that I work with for anxiety and depression as well as faith. He does not offer OCD treatment though. Yeah. So there are lots of folks who do crossovers in terms of treatment. I know lots of folks who might have a specific therapist for trauma or for substance use disorder, and then who also have an OCD specialist. I know work I do with folks kind of on the faith side, really from a chaplaincy and a spiritual care provider lens. I'll do releases and the clinicians will sign releases, and then we'll work together on the case. That happens all the time. So if you're working with a counselor that you really like, but you have OCD and he doesn't, or they don't offer OCD treatment, I would really encourage you to still try to get OCD treatment, right? Because it's really important to engage with someone who knows exposure and response prevention. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop working with a counselor that you love. There can be parallel treatment. There can be collaborative treatment and treatment teams, even in different spaces. And that's something that's super common. So thanks for bringing that up, Patrick. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Eric. I really like what you said about OCD trying to make us doubt doing ERP, ruminative thoughts, like it will not work for you. Yeah. So all of the things, so much of my OCD journey, I spent like that. Even when I think about OCD Awareness Week, like 3 years ago, I remember hearing every advocate speaking, really at every OCD event a couple of years ago, if I'm honest. And I was thinking, nope, that is not going to work for me. Mine is different. Mine is more severe. Mine is real. Mine is an OCD. They have no idea. My theme is slightly different, all of those things. And I never thought it would work for me. And it's actually tough for me to think about, what made me finally take that leap. I think quite honestly, it was out of kind of pure desperation of this is the only option I have. Okay, I guess I'm going to do this in favor of my life, even though I don't necessarily think it'll work. And I want everybody to hear that I didn't think I would be here advocating or working in the area of OCD. I didn't think that I would be in a place to love my life or enjoy my life in any capacity. But just like I can get here, you can get here too, right? I always get emotional when I talk about this. You deserve to be here, regardless of what your OCD says. You deserve to enjoy your life. You deserve to be present in your life. You deserve to engage in treatment, and you deserve to get better. OCD is going to tell you don't, or that yours is different, and it is lying. So I hope you hear that. Okay. Yeah, I totally get that. The compulsion can feel like an off button, but hear me out. It's an off button that the more times you push it, it stops working. And the more times you push it, the more times you have to push it for it to work, even a little bit less. It feels like, because initially when we engage in those compulsions, the anxiety goes down. It feels like that's always going to happen. And it doesn't. Kind of the line gets further and further out. And I know it's super, super hard to live into, but if we can avoid hitting that off button, and this is again, I know something really tough, but I really want you to hear it. The anxiety will go down on its own, and it's not going to go up as high the next time, or the next time, or the next time. But I know it's really hard in this moment, or in that moment. So please know that you are not alone in that. Okay. How do you do ERP with suicidal OCD? I obviously can't set up what my plan is. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that you're not suicidal. Just wondering about ERP as being the gold standard. Yeah. So Emily, I would really encourage you, I will ask if you're working with an OCD specialist, I would really encourage you to talk with them about this. This might be a really great place for imaginal exposures. And this is actually something that I know lots of folks have done in terms of ERP with imaginal exposures, including Ethan, my partner. This was something that he navigated quite a bit. So I would encourage you, since I don't know specifically the core fear, I don't want to give you kind of a specific exposure hierarchy, but I would really encourage you to talk to an OCD specialist, because this is very much something with imaginal exposures that folks navigate with ERP quite frequently. So thank you for bringing this up. And there is no shame around that theme, even though I know it can feel really icky and really, really hard. And there have been some different points where I've navigated this theme as well, and have done that with exposure and response prevention with a licensed clinician. Okay. Okay. How do you deal with health? I know we're like running low on time. I'm going to try to hit as many more as I can really, really quickly. Okay. How do we deal with health OCD? No one is safe from having diseases. Yeah. So OCD is always going to latch onto things that have some element of this could be true, maybe, maybe not. I know that no one is safe from having diseases, but we could also make that argument really about anything, that no one is safe from really any bad thing that we could possibly imagine. I could even say, that I'm not safe from the roof potentially collapsing on my head, right? Like there's always a possibility of something. And I understand with health that feels more frequent or more challenging or more realistic, but I really think we can respond to it in that exact same way. Again, my partner navigates health anxiety, and I know this can be really, really tough, but it's not about saying, it's not about proving to yourself that you'll never have diseases or that nothing bad will ever happen. It's actually about accepting the uncertainty around it and saying, you know what, I'm willing to take that risk, but I'm also trusting that in this moment, it's okay. If I continue to try to search for the answer, I know that I'm going to give up my life. Ethan often says, we're going to give up our life far before any disease takes it, through our OCD, by giving up all of these aspects that we have in the here and now. So I'd really encourage you to try to reframe and really focus on accepting that uncertainty through ERP, regardless of if that thing could come true or couldn't come true. It's all about that uncertainty and making the choice to live in the now. Oh, thanks for asking that, Leanne. Yeah, so how you developed your values checklist you could use as a weapon against OCD. Was there a worksheet, therapy sessions? Yeah, I'm really big on this. Acceptance and commitment therapy is a really great adjunct to ERP that focuses on values. There are a ton of values card sorts. Leanne, I've literally used like 100 different ones online with different folks. If you Google ACT values card sort, you can find a whole bunch of different options. But they're actually one of my favorite spaces that has a checklist and that'll actually help you develop particular values is Marisa Mazza's book, ACT for OCD. I would definitely encourage you to check that out if that's something that you want to navigate, because there are specific resources in there. There are specific worksheets, to your point, and questions that you can actually go through the workbook and develop that particular kind of values checklist component. Another place that you can look for that is any worksheet by Stephen Hayes, who's kind of the founder of ACT. And any Stephen Hayes book also will really help you navigate that. So I hope that's helpful. Okay. Josh, I see lots of sad faces. So I hope you're okay. And I was trying to see if you had a question earlier that I missed. But if it's just because you're struggling in this moment, I'm really, really sorry. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to try to hit one more question. Yeah, I don't. Oh, yeah, stuff kind of went awry in the chat further down. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Leanne, Act Value and book Act for OCD by Marisa Mazza. Yes, and anything by Stephen Hayes. Okay. Oh, oof. Yeah, so worksheets by Stephen Hayes. I'm glad. Okay, there's lots going on in this chat. Okay, well, on that note, there's always something happening here. So I just we're kind of at the close of our time here. So just want to close with a couple things. First of all, I want y'all to hear from me one more time that you deserve a big, beautiful, awesome life with that full, complete spectrum of emotions, regardless of what OCD says or what OCD is saying to you at this particular moment. Okay. I want you to hear that from me. I never thought that I would get better. I never thought that it was possible to get better. And OCD is still something that, is with me, but it's not something that impacts my life in the same way that it did. I just went through this time with my family, this really challenging time, and I was actually there. I was actually present as a part of it, and that is such a big, awesome gift. So I'm really, really thankful to be on this journey with each of you, and I just hope you have the most amazing awareness week. As we close out, I would encourage you to check out a couple of things. I have to note my amazing fiance, Ethan Smith, just came out with he just directed with Biohaven, which is also a partner with No CD, the first ever commercials, national commercials for OCD. So if you head over to all the Biohaven resources in conjunction with No CD, you can see one of those commercials came out today. There's going to be kind of more of them coming out throughout the week, both from the greater good perspective and also what if perspective. So check all of those out. I'm in those, and Ethan, I'm just so proud of for directing those. So please, really, really cool. I'm just like over the moon excited that we get to raise awareness in that way. And then if you are looking to reach out to me or you have additional questions, I'm going to put my website in here. And you are more than welcome to reach out to me there. You can also reach out to me on my Instagram, which I'll drop here. And if you are interested in kind of the initiative that I talked about earlier on, 50 Ultras in 50 states for OCD, where I am racing lots of different ultra marathons to fundraise for people seeking treatment with no CD. You can check that out there. I have my next race in, I said 3 weeks. Is it 2 weeks? 3 weeks? I don't know. It's coming up. So would love that support. And Leanne, yeah. So those commercials are in a couple different places, but if you head over to the Biohaven Instagram, they just posted one of those there. You can also go to OCDtrials.com to see different testimonials of the advocates that are a part of those commercials. But the first one is live on the Biohaven Instagram right now. So if you head over and check that out, you can also reach out to me if you have any trouble finding those. Okay, I could go on forever talking to y'all because I get super excited about all things OCD, but I hope y'all have the best ever OCD Awareness Week. Please know that you're not alone, and we are on this road to reclaiming our lives together. So thank y'all so much, and I will see you soon.